Hello, everyone. Welcome to Afro Anime Entertainment, where we are here to recap your favorite anime and serve up some funny commentary along the way. My name's Taylor, and I will usually be the host on this channel. Sometimes I might have my friends pop in. My brother edits these videos, so he better not fuck it up. The first anime that we're going to start with is Yuri on Ice. Yuri on Ice has a special place in my heart. I watched it way back in 8th or ninth grade, something like that. And I'll let you guess in the comments how old I am now. But I love that anime. I love the opener. I mean, let's talk about it. Yes, we were born to make history. History maker. I can't play it that much because copyright. But wow, what a banger it is. And so we're gonna start off with that one. And for preface, I do watch the dub. Boo boo it up in the comments. I don't care. I've watched dub for the longest. I really like the voice actors. Seem like great people. And I watch sub sometimes. I like to see both versions of it, and then sometimes I like to multitask as well. I like to do other shit when I'm watching my anime. So, I mean, argue with yourselves in the comments. That's about it, and I think that we are ready to dive into your real nice. So, for episode 1, there's about 3 main characters that we have. We have Yuri, other Yuri, and we have Victor. They tell the difference between the Yuris because one is Japanese and one is Russian, but also in the series they call the blonde one Yurio. So I will be calling him Yurio for this video. We start off when the announcer says that when Yuri was 23, he was actually ranked really high in the competitions, but he didn't do so well this time around. So Yuri goes to cry in the bathroom stall, and that's when Yuri comes in and kicks in his door, and in his very thick Russian accent, essentially tells him to retire before he kicks his ass next year, which is a little aggressive, but do your thing. We learn that Yuri is a huge fanboy of Victor, the gray hair guy, and he is such a super fan that he knows all of his performances. He knows all his favorite foods. He even has a dog, the same dog that Victor has, and he named it Victor. Mm-hmm. But everyone essentially knows that Yuri loves Victor, and everyone in the world also loves Victor. He's like a very head guy of the figure skating world, in this world at least. Yuri explains that usually it's a really long season, but since he sucked real bad, he's going back from Detroit where he was studying for college, and he's going home to Japan. When he goes home, he's greeted by Minako, who's like an older sister figure in this series. She owns the local ballet studio, and that's where Yuri spent most of his time growing up. When Yuri gets home, his parents make the most delicious pork cutlet bowl I've ever seen. And you may think that's irrelevant, but like, trust me, it's very relevant for the rest of the series. He's home for maybe 5 minutes before he just runs back out again and goes to his local skating rink where he runs into his friend Yuko. They were childhood best friends, and now she owns the rink with her husband, we assume, or later they say they kind of had to ask, so like, I don't know, but I'm going to call them the owners for the sake of this. When he gets there, he says he has to show Yuko something, and the something is one of Victor's entire performances, move for move, same music, everything. And Yuko is crying, shaking, throwing up. She thinks it's the best thing she's ever seen. But little did we know that her 3 daughters, the little menaces that they are, recorded the entire thing and posted it to not YouTube because that's copyright, but they posted it to a YouTube lookalike. And now Yuri went viral. So Yuri obviously freaks out about this, and he is hiding in his room for forever. And eventually they get him to come out, and they get him to go to the bath because who is standing there? Victor. Okay. And he is tackled by his poodle. I didn't mention the dead dog. And then a dog that looks very much like his dog Victor tackles him, but his dog's super dead, so that leaves Victor's dog to tackle him, which Victor's here? Yes, he is. He's in the bath. And he says, Yuri, I'm gonna be your coach. And that's the end of episode 1. It's the start of episode 2 now, and it has hit the internet that Victor is not skating this season because he's taking time off to coach Yuri. Of course, the internet is pissed about this because Victor is a top dog in this figure skating world. But that freaks Yuri out literally all the time during this series, and it will be a big problem. After that, Yuri and Victor go downstairs, and Victor eats a pork cutlet bowl, which is Yuri's favorite food. And Yuri says, like, wow, this is my favorite foods. My parents would only let me have it after I won a competition. And Victor is like, so have you won any competitions recently? And Yuri's like, no. And so he's like, so you better not eat one again until you win, you little piggy. Which I'm not calling him piggy. Victor calls him piggy, at least in the dub. So that's what I'm going to call him when Victor says it. We then get a montage of Yuri losing a bunch of weight, and at the same time, Yurio is in Russia, absolutely seething with rage, so much that he flies to Japan just to go find Yuri and Victor, because Victor had promised that he was going to make his routine for his debut. So Yurio goes to the ice skating rink because he wants to show Victor that he lost all of his weight, and when he gets there, Yurio is also there, and he's like, "Oh, hey, what are you up?" And just roundhouse kick to the face. He just flies into the building, which like I wouldn't take that disrespect, but live your life. They both go in there and find Victor in the rink, and after a little bit of arguing, Victor decides that he is going to give them a program to the same song, but whoever does it better gets to have him as his coach. And that's episode 2. Episode 3 starts, and it's all about the competition between Yuri and Yurio to see who gets Victor as their coach. Some quotes that I remember from this episode are, he's like sex on ice, and there's so much Eros in this routine that it might impregnate me. So I'll let you guys sit with that. The rest of the episode, we're trying to see the motivations for Yuri and Yurio going into the routines. Yurio is trying to find why he can be like sweet and soft when he is very much the opposite of that. And he finds that in his grandpa. He just loves his grandpa so much that it comes through in his routine. Yuri, on the other hand, not really working so much for him. He's trying to find a way to be seductive and to seduce somebody, but he ends up thinking of a pork cutlet bowl. So that's his object of desire. But then before he goes on the ice, he thinks of a story. He creates a story. There's a man that rides into town, and all the women, they love him. They want him. But one woman, she said, no, he's a player. And so he said, I have to have her. So he goes and he gives her gifts and a bunch of other things. And eventually she's like, okay, fine, maybe you're not that bad. And then the guy goes, yeah, no, I don't want you anymore. The chase is over. It's not fun. And he dips and leaves out of town. And at first Yuri's like, yeah, I got to be this man that comes into town. But then he goes, no, I have to be the woman. And you know who I have to seduce? Victor. Yep, that's obviously the right choice. So the competition begins, and Yurio is skating, but he's just way too in his head, and he's thinking way too much about the routine and not enough about his grandpa. So while the routine looks fine, there was no heart in it, Yuri goes on the ice, though, and he just thinks he's the woman, and he has to go seduce Victor, and he does just that. The audience are eating him up. His friends are like, I've never seen this side to him before, and he absolutely kills it. Yurio sees this and he knows that he lost, so he cuts his losses early and he leaves, but he vows that he will be beating Yuri at the Grand Prix finals, and he'll stick to that. And the rest of the competition, Yuri did win, so Victor gets to stay as coach, and Victor says that he is the tastiest pork cutlet bowl that he's ever seen. On to episode 4. Episode 4 starts, and Victor gets to stay in Japan. Yuri has won, so he gets to stay with his coach, Victor, which is so fun. This entire episode is also just a lot of information, so this is where they decide to explain how ice skating works, or figure skating. The rules for it are jumps and spins count towards the technical score, choreography and interpretation counts towards the program component score, and the final score is those two things combined, minus deductions, aka the times they mess up. This entire episode is about Yuri when he is trying to find music for the competition season. He had competition music that his friend had made a while ago, but his old coach did not like it. And so Victor was like, let me hear it. Maybe he was just a hater. And then Victor listened to it and he says, let's maybe get rid of that one. So Yuri's kind of freaking out because now he needs to find new music. This episode, we are also introduced to my favorite boy, Peachy. I love when Peachy's here. He doesn't really add much to the overall important story of the anime, but in my heart he's number 1, so I will be screaming every time that Peachy is on the screen. So Yuri calls Peachy, and they kind of discuss that they should get back in contact with the girl who wrote the music, and so then this kind of sparks Victor to be like, a girl, what do you like her? And Yuri kind of freaks out about this and starts avoiding Victor all week and trying to do anything to not be around him. So eventually Victor's like, let's just go to the beach. Let's get practice. Let's go to the beach. Let's talk, totally normal coach and partner to do. And so when they get to the beach, Yuri kind of explains the story because Victor was like, why don't you have a girlfriend? And Yuri's like, well, I did like this girl once at my old rink that I used to skate at, but one of our friends got injured one time, and so we had to go to the hospital, and when we were in the hospital, she hugged me, and I didn't like that because she thought I was weak, which is so weird that that's the turn that they decided to take with that, but sure, whatever. So Victor's kind of just like, okay, I get that. I totally understand. Between all of this, back in Russia at Yurio's rink, he has a new ballet instructor who is Caitlin Glass with a really thick Russian accent, so that's fun to listen to. But he's just kind of doing the most intense ballet performances, and then all of a sudden we cut back to like the most charged conversation I've ever heard between two characters, where it says, Yuri says, that was good, but we can do it another time. Victor says, we've done it 10 times already. Yuri says, actually, it was 13. And Victor goes, I meant to say that I'm impressed with your stamina. So I'm not going to say anything, but you guys can take that as you will. The rest of the episode is just more information about how the figure skating Grand Prix works. And so it goes as follows. The overall competition is called the Figure Skating Grand Prix Series. Skaters with the highest scores from the previous seasons participate in a max of 2 competitions. In this case, the first event is Skate America, the second is Skate Canada, the third is Cup of China, the fourth is the NHK Trophy, Japan, the fifth is France, and the last is Russia. And out of those competitions, the top 6 go ahead to the finals. Everyone gets their competition envelopes, and Yuri's first one is Skate China, while he'll go up against Peachy. I love to see Peachy. And his second one is with Yurio in Russia, which I don't know if I expected them to have like a Yurio head-to-head this soon, but that's what it's going to be. But before all of this, Yuri has to compete in smaller competitions because he sucked so bad last season. So he will be competing in a local talent to make sure that he can go on to the Cup of China. And that's where that episode ends. Episode 5 starts out, and this is the small competition that Yuri has to compete in before he can go on to the Cup of China. The competition for this episode's name is Minami, and Minami is an actual child, but it's very cute because Minami looks up to Yuri and he's really excited to compete against him. So originally Yuri's a little nervous before he goes out on the ice, but Victor comes up behind him, gives him a little hug and says, "Don't be nervous, just go out there and seduce me," which like, okay. Yuri gets off and he kind of fucked up his performance a little bit because he did miss 2 jumps, which Victor told him to take out in the first place. But it's fine. He still got his personal high score. And eventually, behind the scenes, Meeting comes out and is like freaking out and is like, "Did you see me? Did you see me?" And Yuri's like, "No, bestie. I was backstage doing interviews." And Minami's like, "Well, you better give your all tomorrow, or else you're not the skater that I thought you were." And this, like, the TV people are in a frenzy. They're like, "Oh, it's a competition now." And for some reason, this really freaks Yuri out, even though it's a 13-year-old. So the next day, they go to compete, and Yuri is taking it way too seriously. Who would have thought? Minami goes and is like super excited to like see him and wishes him good luck, and Yuri completely ices him, which is so rude and really pisses Victor off. And Victor's like, if you don't apologize to him, then like you're not the person I thought you were. And Victor goes off, which like, wow, Yuri's in a little bit of shambles right now. He's kind of stressed out. So eventually, before he goes on the ice, he does pat Minami on the back and says to like do a good job, and Minami's all excited. So cute. We love it. Yuri ends up wishing Minami good luck, and he gives him like a really aggressive pat on the back, but Minami is really excited about it, and Minami absolutely slays. He gets a personal best score, so we love that for Minami. Now, when I was watching this, I'm going to put my own bias in here for a minute because Yuri was really pissing me off. Because Victor said, "Let's take out the jumps. You don't make the jumps, and like we might get a lower score, but your technicality is still high, so like we'll still be up there. You'll still win. It'll be fine." Yuri said, "No, I'm going to do the jumps anyway." And what does he do? Slam his face directly into the wall. And like to the point where he has a nosebleed. And so like he still gets a good score. Of course he beats Minami, a 13-year-old child, because his program was way more complicated. But he comes off the ice and Victor's like, good job and all, but like never pull that shit again. And Yuri's kind of like, okay. At the end of this episode, we get a clip of Yuri at the press conference, and he's saying what his program's going to be about this year, which he says love, because he's finally found somebody that, understands and is worth fighting for. To which his parents and Minato at home are like, so fuck us then, right? But that's the end of episode 6. Oh, also Yuri says that, like, he's really passionate about his speech, and all Victor can think about is like, he's so silly, get rid of the tie. We're burning the tie, and you're getting a new one when you come back. This episode, we see that Yuri is finally going to the Cup of China. We also learn that the results from the other ones, Yurio did get second. Boo, what a loser. He is an actual child. I think he's like 15. But that's okay because he still gets to go on to the next cup and Yuri will still face him there. We also have a one-off this episode that Victor really wants to go to Hot Pot for dinner. And so when they go there, Victor gets, a little bit sloshed. And like Peachy is with his friends and Yuri texts him and is like, "Hey, like come out to Hot Pot with us." and so he's all jazzed. But when he gets there with his friends, Victor's there with his shirt off, like all over Yuri, and so they're like, "What's going on here?" And then that's kind of it. And then they go to a competition the next day, so I just had to include that. The Cup of China begins, and Peachy goes out and he absolutely kills it. He only has a 1 point deduction. I'm so proud of Peachy. And then we have to go back to Yuri, who's freaking out like he usually does, because he's really feeling the pressure of everyone being like, "You took Victor away from the ice," and blah, 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 blah. And for some reason, it just keeps getting to him, and this is an overall plot. But he freaks out, and then before he goes on the ice, he tells Victor to don't take his eyes off him. And when he's out there, he says he's the only one that can satisfy Victor as he's being his sexy little pork cutlet bowl. So he goes out and he actually gets a like perfect routine. It's pretty flawless. So I'll give it to Yuri this one time. The rest of this episode is other routines that are not really important to the plot, but there is one routine. His name is Leo from the USA. And so he goes out and he does his thing. And I just, had to acknowledge USA. This episode, we also get to go out and see that Chris is competing, and Chris's whole thing is having a lot of sex appeal. And Peachy even makes a comment that even the ice looks wet after his performance is done. So Chris definitely is a special character. He also definitely does not have a reoccurring thing where he actually busts on the ice, but we're just gonna skate right past that. And the only other competitor I wrote down was Leo from the USA. And that's all I have to say. And the last part of this episode is that we see at the end of the first day of competition, Yuri is on top. He's number one, and everyone points this out. So what does Yuri do? Freak the fuck out once again. And so I don't know, guys. Guess what episode 7 is going to be about? Guys, guess how this episode starts? Yuri is still nervous about the competition. And so he's really freaking out today. And so Victor actually has to take him like into the underground parking garage to go stretch because he was just so nervous. He also at one point tries to force him to take a nap and he like cuddles him a little bit, but this really did help Yuri out for whatever reason. So while all this is going on, Chris is back on the ice, and today he does bust once again on the ice, but today he makes the sound for it, and it kind of comes out of nowhere like a jump scare. But that's fine. Back to the parking garage. Yuri's stressing, and Victor's like, "I really don't know what to do," and he's like, "What if I just completely shattered his heart before he went out there?" So he talks to Yuri, and he says, "If you go out there and bomb, I'm just going to resign as your coach." And Yuri immediately starts bawling, like hard tears. And so Victor's like, I was just kidding. I'm not actually going to resign. And he was like, "Yeah, but like there's a lot of pressure on me right now. Why the fuck would you do that?" And Victor is like, "My bad. I really don't know how to like help. Should I just like kiss you or something?" And Yuri's like, "No, like I just need to be there for me." Which like, what the that's a little bit of a headspin, but okay. Back on the ice, Peachy's performing, and Peachy kills it. He smoked these hoes to the extent where he is now number one in the competition. It's Yuri's turn on the ice, and he goes out there, and the entire time he's like, "Wow, I just feel so much better after crying." And he really has this like cool, calm, collected air about him where he's doing these different moves, and he's like, "Nah, that was fine. I've done it better in practice." Like that's kind of going on. Except for he attempts to do a move that only Victor has ever done before, and so the crowd goes insane. They're eating him up. They love him, and this takes Victor by like way surprise. So he finishes the competition, and Victor ends up meeting him by the rink and like kind of plants one on him, and they fall over onto the ice. And he said that I wanted to surprise you more than you just surprised me because Victor's whole element of surprise thing. Yuri ends up getting silver overall, and guess who gets gold? Peachy, and he so deserved it. He's the first skater from Thailand to get this far, and he uses Thai music in his performance, and the crowd really just like eats it up. And Peachy has his little moment, and I love that for him because whatever Yuri's doing for now, find that move is cool, but Peachy, he's really number one in my heart. And that's where the competition ends for the day. Episode 8 starts, and we are now in Russia for the next competition. So far, the only people that are moving on to the finals are Chris from Switzerland and Odebek from Kazakhstan. He's kind of irrelevant right now, but like he kind of has something to do with the plot later. And Yuri is still competing to get a place in the finals, and so is Yuri-O. So we have a Yuri versus Yuri-O this episode. We also get introduced to a sibling pair this episode named Sarah and Michelle, and now I have to explain this thing that anime likes to do, where they have siblings that are way too close to each other, if you guys get what I mean. In this case, Michelle is like, nobody's good enough to date my sister except for me. Which, like, I don't understand why this happens. If you guys have watched Psyche K, it's like that whole thing with Tanahashi's, like, brother, where he's like way too obsessed with her, and like that's just an overall theme in anime, and I don't really know why, but I had to explain it because they kind of do that a lot in the show, and like there's a 5 minute segment about it at one point. Yuri's turn is up to go on the ice, and he is very nervous beforehand, like usual. So Victor pulls him in by his tie and says to just go out there and show everybody his love. And so Yuri does exactly that and gets a personal high score. Yuri-O comes out, and everyone's kind of shocked because he looks like the prettiest princess you've ever seen. And on the ice, he's super graceful, but then he sees Victor and Yuri, and that pisses him off, so he misses a jump, which is fine because he still places enough.
Oh, brother, this guy
We also
stinks.
meet this character named JJ from Canada, and like he's hot shit or whatever, and I have to talk about him because spoiler alert, he is going to be in the finals, but like that man is so irrelevant to me. I truly don't care, but JJ's there, and JJ is fine. Everybody loves JJ, especially his fiance. And at the end of the episode, we get the most tragic part because everyone's so excited from Yuri doing well that day, but then Victor, he gets a bad call. He gets a call from back home, and apparently his dog has eaten a steam bun and it got stuck in his throat, so it's not looking good for him. And so Victor has to go back to Japan. And so he's like, who is going to coach Yuri at least for a day while I'm gone? My old coach from Russia. To which everyone's like, what? And that's just the end of episode. Starting this episode, Victor has to go back to Japan to go check on his dog because he choked on a steam bun, and everyone's a little concerned, but he's like, don't worry about it, like, Yakov's got you. But does Yakov have him? Nobody knows, because at the press conference the next day, the people are saying that Yakov and Yuri weren't really talking that much, and so they're like, are you sure about this, Yuri? And Yuri's like, I'll just skate like Victor's here, like, it's really no pressure. Of course it's pressure, of course Yuri's freaking out. While all this is going on, Yuri-O is a little pissed because this is the second coach that Yuri has taken from him today. And so he is running around, and his coach says that his grandpa's here to visit him. So he goes to the car, and his grandpa gives him some homemade pierogies, and he's like, oh, these are delicious. But then he realizes, he's like, what's the filling in these? And he's like, it's a pork cutlet one. Of course, he's pissed about it for a second, but it's delicious, so it's fine. The second day of the competition officially starts, and honestly, there's a lot of irrelevant people this episode, but the sibling pair is back. So Sarah, before Michelle goes out on the ice, is like, we're not going to be together anymore. Like, this is my last competition, like, being side by side with you. I've got to move on. And Michelle is devastated when he's on the ice. He's so sad, and everybody in the audience is like, he looks a little sad, but he decides he's going to skate his feelings out, and he's going to let Sarah go. And he ends up doing that, and he ends up killing it, gets a personal best score. And Sarah runs, and it's like, oh my god, like, I'm so sorry I said all those like mean things, but you killed it, and now you see that we're better apart, so I am still leaving. And so she runs away, and he's still like, oh, devastated, because I think he thought that he was going to win her back. Didn't really work like that. Then we have another irrelevant skater because he doesn't make it to the finalists, so we're just going to slide right past him. Yurio's up next, and he really, really wants to win gold for Russia. And since Victor's not competing, he really wants to just claim that title. And so usually in his first sequence, he has 4 jumps, and then he has 2 at the end. But he decides that he's going to put 6 jumps in the second half of his routine, which is very hard from what I understand about figure skating. And so he goes out there and absolutely kills it. It's a flawless routine, and he gets a personal best. And so everyone in his camp is going crazy. At the same time, Yuri gets on the ice, and of course, what is he? Nervous as per usual. And he goes and he fucks up his first jump. It's supposed to be a double, and he does a single. He fucks up. Of course, he's in his head. He's like, I have to prove that I was the right choice, why Victor left figure skating, and blah, blah, blah. And then he ends up doing fine. But he gets third, which is trouble because JJ is up next. And he's probably going to kill it. So right now it's looking like Yuri might not make it to the finals. But JJ gets on the ice, and to summarize JJ's character, he says that I'm not the next prince, I'm already a king. I hate JJ so bad. JJ, unfortunately, does kill it. He has a higher difficulty than everybody else in the competition, and he gets the highest score. So JJ takes first, but since Yuri placed second in the competition before this one at the Cup of China, he is able to qualify. And so he's not like jumping around for joy happy, but he does just go into this zoned out state and just starts trying to hug everybody. And then when he tries to hug Yurio, it's just a long segment of them just Yurio's running away. He's sprinting for his life. After the competition is over, Yuri is outside, of course, contemplating like, Victor, and he left for a reason and blah, 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 but he's interrupted because Yuri-O comes out and kicks him. And he's like, it's your birthday soon, right? And he gives him a pierogi. And Yuri's like, oh my god, this is like tasty. Is this like a pork one? He's like, yeah, my grandpa made it, and he's like actually a nice person for once. Um, End of the episode comes around, and Victor and the dog are okay. They're back together, and Yuri says that he has something to tell Victor. He wants him to coach him until he retires, and Victor says, "Yes, I will." And he says that it sounds like a marriage proposal. Stay tuned for more about that. All right, this episode is not getting a too in-depth breakdown because it's just like a filler episode between the finals. But everyone's off on their own one-off adventures. But we also have a really cute moment between Yuri and Victor because Yuri's looking everywhere because he wants a special like item that him and Victor can share. And so he decides on rings. Definitely not wedding bands. They're literally just rings. You know how I know that they're just rings and not wedding bands? Because they put them on each other one at a time in front of a church, like any best friends do. And I think that's good. And the rest of the episode, everybody goes to dinner except for JJ because nobody likes JJ. And we are sitting there and they start telling tales of the banquet last year. And Yuri is like, I don't know if I had a lot of fun. Everyone's like, girl, we have you on video going absolutely buck wild. And so Yuri's like, what? And so apparently he got so drunk because he was so nervous. And so he had a dance off with Yurio. And I would love to see the footage. And we do see the footage. For the rest of the end credits, they just play the videos. But at the end, very last second of the episode, we see that Yuri, he was whispering to Victor and he said, Victor, if I win this dance off against Yurio, you have to become my coach. Ooh, that's where it came from. Victor didn't just see the video and he's had this in his head. The video just convinced him. So I thought that was a bit of a gag. On to the next. It's Grand Prix time. Yuri goes out there and he does his love on Eros routine, and he does pretty well, but he does touch out on one of his jumps, so he ends up getting a 97, which definitely is not his personal best, but it's fine. Peachy goes out there and Peachy absolutely kills it. Everyone's loving him. The announcers are making sure everybody knows, like, this is the first time a Thai skater's been in the Grand Prix finals, and everybody's really excited, and he really gets the audience going. But his jumps are a lower difficulty score, and so he does get a 95. So right now he is behind you. Next up, Yurio goes on the ice, and he absolutely kills it. He has a flawless routine to the point where he beat Victor's previous high score. So everyone's going crazy. Even Victor has like a little smile on his face. He's really impressed. So he ends up getting a score of about 118. Chris is on the ice next, and he does his little routine that everybody likes. Everybody always eats Chris up, but it's not better than Yuri's was, so he ends up a score of about 102. Next is Odebek from Kazakhstan, and he does fine. I think he gets a score of like 112 or something like that. He's just really not that relevant to the plot, besides like he had a little one-off story with Yurio where they're like friends now, but I didn't write too much about him. The last skater that goes on is JJ, and now JJ fucking sucks. He tanks. The pressure really gets to him for some reason, and he does not land a single jump. He either does not complete or touches out of every single one, and so he gets a score of like 86. Jesus, like, it's looking really bad for JJ, which is great for me because I don't like JJ. So at the end of the first day, we have Yurio is in first, Odebek is in second, Chris is in third, Yuri's in fourth, PG's in fifth, and JJ is in last place like he deserves. On to the next. We have made it to the end of Yuri on Ice. This is the last episode. The last episode covers the second part of the Grand Prix, and even though I watched this anime probably like twice a year for the last like 6 or 7, I can never remember the ending of this. So this was good for me too. So we're starting out, and we start with a really heated conversation between Yuri and Victor. And Yuri essentially says that, like, thanks for your time and everything, but this is my last season. I'm retiring. And Victor does not take this well, and he's crying, and he's like, I can't believe you would be that selfish. And they both just decide, they're like, let's cool it, and we'll both make a decision after the finals. So we get to the competition, and Peachy goes on, and he really does so good. He goes out there and he's in like tear shambles because he says that all he wants to do is show everyone how fun ice skating is, and he wants to bring his ice show to Thailand one day, which, oh my god, I'm not gonna start crying, but I love Peachy. JJ also ends up going out there and he does fuck up one step, but other than that, he does fine. They have a whole emotional moment where everyone's like chanting JJ, JJ. I don't care. Skipping past JJ. Next up on the ice is Yuri. He has a little moment with Victor before where Victor's like, you know what? Go out there and have fun. Just have a little fun skate. And Yuri's like, don't switch up on me now. What do you actually want to say? And Victor says, you're right. Win a gold medal, damn it, because I took time off to coach you. To which Yuri's like, that's the Victor I know. So he goes up there and he says, since this is his final time on the ice, that he is going to do a program that is as hard as Victor's was when he was in the finals. And he ends up beating Victor's personal high score. He kind of kills it. So everyone's going crazy. He nails jumps he's never nailed before. Everyone just really eats it up. So claps for Yuri. Even Victor's like, I'm kind of impressed right now. Next on the ice is Chris, and Chris does fine. Chris always does fine, and he always has a moment at the end where he does fine in his costume. And I don't know why this is a character trait for Chris. Like, I feel like he'd have to wash his he has the same costume. I feel like he washes his costume all the time. Does it come out? Whatever. And Odebek goes on the ice next, and he also does fine. Really, no disrespect towards my man Odebek. Is just kind of let's get on with the program. Yurio is the last to go on the ice, and he does nail it. He really kills it out there. He does miss one jump, but since his difficulty was higher than most people, he does beat Yuri. So Yurio is on top, and Yuri gets second, which is not how you usually expect things to go, but that's where we ended. Yuri gets off the ice and he has his silly little silver medal, which Victor is not kissing because it is a loser medal. But Yuri says that he'll make it up to him next year by getting a gold one. So Yuri's staying on the ice. And Victor makes a comment and he says, it's going to be hard to get a gold medal and coach you next year. So I guess you'll have to win 5 more for me. So Victor's also getting back on the ice. So we're going to have Yuri and Victor competing together. Except though, are we? Because this is a Mappa animated anime. And guess what Mappa has? Boy, I can think of a couple that they're working on right now. And so they've always said, like, oh my God, Yuri on Ice movie, blah, 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 dropping teasers and everything. I haven't seen it. This anime came out when I was in like middle school. There's nothing else. You want to read the manga? There is no manga. It was an original story. So you just have to suffer like the rest of us now who love this anime. This was really fun though. I loved going back and watching this anime that I have not watched in at least a couple of months. So if you guys like this, go and like and hit the subscribe button. You know you'll be back for more. I'm really thinking about doing Fruits Basket next. So make sure to tune in. Bye.